Those Republicans who said, well, we didn't impeach him because the courts will handle it. Well, then the courts didn't handle it.
And then they endorsed him.
And the Supreme Court has pretty much given him carte blanche to do anything with impunity, has it not?
Yeah.
So where do you get the institutions held? I don't think the institutions have.
Bill Maher didn't hold back when he discussed the controversial question of whether American democracy can survive a second Trump presidency. In a conversation with former Republican strategist Tim Miller and journalist Michael Moynihan, they explored the risks and potential consequences of Donald Trump returning for another term. Maher and Miller both argued that a second Trump presidency could put extreme pressure on American institutions, challenging the belief that these guardrails can withstand authoritarian tendencies. With the 2024 election approaching, Maher warned that complacency could be dangerous and that voting might be the last defense for American democracy.
We have to contend with the fact that 75 million people voted for Donald Trump. We do. I mean, we have to figure out why that is.
Well, part of it is because a lot of smart people are telling them it's going to be okay, right? So part of it is that these people are abdicating their responsibility and that they trust Ben Shapiro, they trust Megyn Kelly, they trust the Wall Street Journal.
I don't think the 75 million people who voted for him are all Ben
Some
Shapiro
of them are.
listeners. But at the same time, you have to see, like, if 75 million people figuring out why they would do that, the one thing is that they do believe in the institutions, that, like, this happened before. And I get the counter argument. This happened for 4 years. He was reckless, but nothing bad happened in the way they said it would.
Michael Moynihan argued that American institutions could survive another Trump presidency. He pointed out that during Trump's first term, the checks and balances of the system worked, keeping him in line. Moynihan believes that since these systems held up once, they would continue to function effectively if Trump were reelected. However, Maher and Miller pushed back, arguing that while institutions survived the first term, they were under immense strain. They warned that there's no guarantee they would survive a second term. With Trump's authoritarian tendencies and his stated intention to do things differently, they fear he could become even more aggressive, risking irreversible damage to democratic norms and institutions.
75 million people can vote for Donald Trump is that the presumption is that the institutions will hold. I mean, there are very, very smart conservatives. That George Will, one who hates Donald Trump, says, I cannot stand him, but if he becomes president, I believe in the institutions, right? H.R. McMaster, who believes that he's unfit to be president, said something very similar this week, that I believe the institutions of this country are strong enough to withstand another administration. I'm not saying this should happen. I haven't voted for the guy. I will not vote for the guy. This will be the third time I haven't voted for him. And I never would because of the things that Tim mentions and because of the things I've mentioned. But I don't believe that we have a fascist here that's going to take over the country and put.
Michael Moynihan also disagreed with the idea that Trump is a fascist. He argued that true fascism requires a deeper, more consistent erosion of democratic norms, something Trump hasn't shown. At least not yet. In contrast, Maher and Miller likened Trump's behavior to early authoritarian leaders like Hitler, who, despite failing in their initial coup attempts, were still undeniably fascist. For Maher and Miller, Trump's willingness to dismantle democratic norms for personal gain signals a troubling authoritarian streak that should not be ignored. Maher also dismissed the idea of American exceptionalism as a safeguard against authoritarianism, pointing to examples like Germany, Turkey, and Hungary, where even established democracies have fallen to authoritarian rule. He warned that if Trump's unchecked behavior continues,
A headline that Trump had called for a firing squad for Liz Cheney. And this is what I really don't like about the media. No, he didn't.
He did not.
You don't have to move me to not like Donald Trump.
He says
more
so
than
many
I
shitty
already,
things. Why do you have to
And
do
by
that?
the way,
Yeah.
if people don't realize it, well, here's what he said. He's criticizing him for being a war hawk. I mean, she is Dick Cheney's daughter. He said, she's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay. Let's see how she feels about it. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, we'll send tens of thousands of troops right into the mouth of the.
Bill Maher also criticized Trump's hypocrisy when he attacked Liz Cheney as a warmonger. Maher pointed out the contradiction of politicians who support military intervention but ignore its consequences. Trump's attack on Cheney, while aimed at discrediting her opposition to him, highlights a broader issue in politics. Leaders who advocate for aggressive foreign policies rarely face the human and ethical costs of those decisions. By calling out Cheney, Trump inadvertently exposes this tendency among politicians to use military action as a policy tool without addressing its profound impact on lives both abroad and at home.
You know what I mean? Like there's a whole right-wing MAGA like it's not 1984, right? Where there are only 3 networks, and if they're and if they're biased, if Dan Rather is telling you something that's wrong, that's like a really big deal that he's biased because 60 million people are watching Dan Rather. It's like as many people like are watching daytime MSNBC as are watching primetime Newsmax, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? So obsessing over the criticism, right? So obsessing over the criticism of it, I just sometimes think is a little overkill.
So J.D. Vance.
Tim Miller criticized conservative media figures like Ben Shapiro and Megyn Kelly for softening their stance on Trump. He argued that these figures are putting party loyalty above core democratic values. According to Miller and Maher, this shift represents a betrayal of traditional conservative principles. These commentators, they argued, are willing to overlook Trump's controversial actions to stay aligned with the Republican base. Maher and Miller pointed out the double standard. If a Democrat exhibited even a fraction of Trump's behavior, conservative voices would demand drastic responses. This grading on a curve, they warned, is a dangerous form of partisanship that weakens genuine accountability and minimizes the serious threat Trump's behavior poses to democratic institutions.
Teens are purposely becoming trans to get into elite colleges.
What's that?
Well, it is. I don't think that's how. I don't think that's why teens are becoming.
Maher also addressed what he sees as a troubling lack of accountability in the legal system, specifically focusing on Attorney General Merrick Garland's hesitancy in prosecuting Trump. Maher argued that Garland's delay in taking action is driven by a fear of being seen as politically motivated, which sets a dangerous precedent. It suggests that former presidents are above the law, feeding into the perception that Trump and potentially other former leaders are untouchable. Maher also criticized Republicans for not convicting Trump during his second impeachment, claiming that their decision to defer to the justice system only for it to falter under pressure reflects a broader reluctance to hold Trump accountable. This, Maher suggested, has only worsened the problem of unchecked presidential power.